Welcome to the Godot BootCamp lesson on logging out an authenticated user. We're going to start this lesson in the brainCloud API reference and investigate the logout request. The logout request essentially ends the session with the brainCloud server. Once the user logs out, they can no longer make brainCloud requests. This request takes in one parameter, forget user. If you pass in true to this request, then the profile ID that is saved to the user's device will be reset. Passing in false would simply end the brainCloud session but not clear the profile ID. This is an important parameter. Remember that the reconnect request depends on the saved profile ID to reconnect to the server. Without it, the user would need to log back in with an authenticated identity. However, if the user used an anonymous identity instead and the profile ID was cleared from the device, then the user will no longer be able to access their account and their account will be orphaned. Checking the response, there isn't any critical data that we need to capture on a logout response. Open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the network.cs file. Declare a pair of public callback delegates used for handling a logout response. Declare a public method called Logout. This method takes in the logout delegates that we just declared as the parameters. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, we'll log a meaningful error message, and if the failed callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Declare a success callback lambda. In the body of the success callback lambda, log the response data. If the success callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Next, implement the failed callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, log an error message. If the failed callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Make the brainCloud logout request. Pass in true and the callback lambdas as the arguments. It's important to note that this request will end the brainCloud session. Passing in true simply means that the saved profile ID will be cleared from the user's device, whereas passing in false would end the brainCloud session but not clear the saved profile ID. Another note, if the user is authenticated anonymously and we clear the saved profile ID, then the user will no longer be able to access their account and their account will be orphaned. However, if the user had an account with an authenticated identity, then they would simply have to log back in with their credentials. Save the file and then navigate to the brainCloud dialog.cs file. In the onLogout button clicked method, delete the to-do statement and in its place invoke the network manager's logout method, passing in the onBrainCloud logout completed method as the argument. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiled successfully, open the Godot editor. Run the game. We've authenticated with the brainCloud server using reconnect authentication that was set up in the previous lesson. Navigate to the brainCloud dialog and click Logout. Notice that the dialog updates. We are now logged out from brainCloud and can no longer make brainCloud requests. Before we end this lesson, there's one more thing I'd like to show you. We're going to use the brainCloud wrapper's logout request to keep track of when the user exits the game. brainCloud added support in 5.2 to keep track of user session durations, but it requires logging out from brainCloud when the user exits the app. In this situation though, we don't want to clear the user's saved profile ID. Stop the app and then return to Visual Studio Code and navigate to the network.cs file. Above the logout method, declare a public method called endSession. In the body of this method, invoke brainCloud's logout method, passing in false as the argument. This request will end the brainCloud session when the app is closed, but it won't clear the profile ID that is saved to the user's device. Below the process method, declare a method override called notification. In the body of the method, check if the notification parameter is equal to the close request. If it is, invoke the end session request, and then get the tree and invoke quit. This method will be invoked if the user closes the game window via the X in the top right corner. Save the file and then navigate to the main menu dialog.cs file. In the onExit button clicked method, invoke the network's end session method. We need to manually invoke the end session request here because the notification method that we set up in the network class doesn't get invoked if the user exits the app internally like we are here. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiles successfully, return to the Godot editor. Run the game. Enter a user ID and a password. Click Login. After we authenticate with brainCloud, wait about 5 seconds and then close the app. Open your web browser and then navigate to the brainCloud portal. Click User. Click the top user in the recent active list. On the right, click Go to User. On the left, click User Activity. Notice that we were able to capture this user's session duration. This is a powerful new data point that will show you how long your users are actually using your game or app. authentication error handling is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.